Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise, and we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello dear viewer, dear listener, my name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Welcome to yet another exciting and indeed fascinating episode of Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. We do our best to bring you exciting, cutting-edge information each and every time, and I'm sure you're going to love our guest this time around, this particular episode. My guest is Mr. Nonofo Molefhi, who is an educationist, an entrepreneur, and a politician. But I leave it to him to explain himself and to tell you who he is and to share his background. Honorable Minister, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mogobe. It's an honor and privilege to interact with you on this particular occasion. My career in the public service started in 1978. Initially, I worked for the Department of Auditor General. After a few months, I realized I'm not cut for audit. I left. I then joined Department of Social and Community Development at local government. I was recruited here in Gaborone, posted to Central District. When I arrived in Serowe, I was told that was not my destination. I was then sent off to Bobonong. When I arrived in Bobonong, my supervisor told me, your duty station is Semolale. So it was an exciting period for me, particularly that at the time, the Zimbabwean Liberation War was raging, and Semolale to the Zimbabwean border is just a stone's throw. So in the evenings, you would hear the big guns sounding. Midnight, you see droves of people coming through the village, coming as refugees. So to me, that was the baptism of fire for a 20-year-old who has just joined public service, fresh from school, inexperienced, but that was life then. But of course, I then progressed through the ranks of public service until 1999, really, when I resigned from government to join the family business. And in 1999, the position I held in government was a district officer in Silibe Pikwe. And in between, I've served in other capacities, a district youth officer, head of youth affairs at the Ministry of Local Government, then later at Labor and Home Affairs, when the youth affairs function was transferred from local government to Labor and Home Affairs. So all in all is about 22 years of public service. And of course, I joined the family business in 1999 or 2000. My wife has been with what was then Academy of Business Management. It was a private tertiary institution.
Yes.
At that time, of course, since its birth in 1989, they were offering mainly franchised programs of UK-based examination boards. Of course, there was a moment when they offered government courses in administration, supervision, clerical work, and related, in general administration work, public relations, and so on and so forth. Then, of course, in 2003, when Silibe Pikwe constituency was divided into two constituencies.
As the population was growing.
Yes, the population had grown. I was then approached by some of the people that I got acquainted to during my public service time. They approached me to contest the primary elections on behalf of, on the ticket of BDP, Botswana Democratic Party. And I stood in the Silibe Pikwe East constituency against a colleague in the party, the late Mayor Mapolo, may her soul rest in peace.
Yeah.
I won the primary and ultimately won the national elections in 2009, 2004, the next cycle in 2009, and the next cycle 2014.
So it seems to me like you've been in politics now 15 years? Solid?
Yes,
Okay.
almost 20, it's getting too close to 20 years, from 2013 when I started the campaigns up to now.
And you've been at the highest level as a minister. How long were you a minister of government?
I was a minister of government for almost 11 years.
And what were the various portfolios?
I served initially when I was appointed in 2008. I served in the Ministry of Lands and Housing. Then in 2012, I got redeployed, transferred to the Ministry of Transport and Communications. Then in 2014, I moved to Ministry of Science and Technology, which was then Ministry of Infrastructure, Science and Technology. That ministry was reorganized in 2016 when it became Ministry of Infrastructure and Housing Development. It then gave away or shared off the science, technology
Tertiary education.
to tertiary education.
Aspect.
Then,
Okay.
of course, in 2018, I then moved to Presidential Affairs and Public Administration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, today we're going to talk about the enterprise of education or entrepreneurship in the education space, which you know a lot about. And let's get the conversation started by asking, why is this an important subject, and why did you choose as an entrepreneurial activity education?
Like I said, my wife was initially, and she still remains, the anchor of this business. When ABM started in 1989, she was there. She is, in fact, an educationist by training. She was a secondary school teacher in Matsekhe before leaving government employ to work on business. So her passion has always been in education. And therefore, the transition from a government employee in education to business education was smooth, because a gap was identified at the time. The only institution that offered human resource training outside of University of Botswana and IDM was ABM. That was until 1989, or before 1989. And therefore, there was a gap in the provision of education, particularly in-service training.
Okay. You started off as a college, and then you were, registered as a university. What would you say were the biggest challenges, and how was the transition from college to university?
In the earlier days, we didn't have a good regulatory framework, and therefore there was Botswana Training Authority, BOTA, and BOTA was only responsible for accreditation of programs, certificate to diploma, and short-term training programs. And that was the space in which ABM played until the Botswana Qualifications Authority came in. And of course, the precursor to Botswana Qualifications Authority was the Tertiary Education Council, where programs above diploma were accredited and registered. And therefore, as ABM grew in terms of scope and focus, there was that deliberate move to now provide qualifications above diploma. One of the challenges at the time was the absence of a regulatory framework, like I said, and therefore setting up Tertiary Education Council, then Botswana Qualifications Authority. That transition from BOTA to Tertiary Education Council presented new challenges that required the appropriate level human resource to manage the regulatory environment. And therefore, that was part of the challenges. And ultimately, of course, we were able to succeed in getting programs registered. Of course, then other institutions came along.
Well, speaking of other institutions, I know that around the same time became a university, there's also Boto, and I do not know whether Limpopo was a university or not. But were there any, what would you say were the special challenges associated with the competition and the mushrooming, if you like, of other universities around the same time?
Yes. The biggest challenge was to stabilize ABM in the phase of competition. Because Limpopo came in, and of course Limpopo had the favor of government, because already before they moved to Botswana, government was sponsoring students to Malaysia to attend at Limpopo. So when they moved to Botswana, they were already a familiar face within government. And ABM, of course, had to also double up. Boto came in, Baisago came in before Boto. And of course, then there was this movement. The movement of the...
Within a short space of time.
That movement was also necessitated by a government's desire to create a diversified education and create an environment in Botswana, or for Botswana to become an education hub, where we could use education to raise money by having foreign students attending universities in Botswana.
I'm glad you mentioned the education hub, because my next question to you was to understand where the concept comes from and in simple terms what it really means, an education hub.
Yes. The concept of an education hub was to make Botswana a center of excellence in education, so that we would have people coming from all over the world to attend tertiary education in Botswana. When you look at some of the small towns, not really small in terms of other towns in their localities or in their countries, when you look at a place like Boston in the United States, as a city, more than 80% of its population is around education. There are many universities and colleges
including
in Boston.
The big one, Harvard.
Yes. So that is what government was trying to model around, so that we could then become a center or a country where education offering plays a significant role in the economy of the country.
What did you say? What is the situation so far? Are we succeeding? Are we getting somewhere along in terms of that objective?
We have not fully succeeded, because the concept was not pushed to its logical conclusion. Some of the countries, emerging countries where they had concepts of hub or hubs, you would have a place like CBD with facilities built up by government. When you come in as an investor, you want to open an education facility. Already the buildings are there. You are not required to apply for land to start with the infrastructure. You simply are allocated classrooms. This will be your classroom space, and we therefore move into to recruit students and move on. We could have done that as government through BDC, because BDC, I believe, as an investment vehicle of government, has the potential or the capacity to do such a thing, to provide infrastructure for investment, and education is no exception.
Do you think it's something that could have been driven along in the same way as we are driving, innovation? I mean, we have the innovation hub, for instance. Do you think with education we need to maybe consider an infrastructure of that kind, an organization of that kind to drive it?
I think there is still opportunity to reorient the education hub. There are countries far afield which are desirous to bring students to Botswana, because politically it is quiet, crime is quiet, violence is compared to other countries. So there are countries out there which are desirous to bring students here. And of course, when I say countries, I'm talking about individual parents who are desirous to send their kids to bring their kids to Botswana. For instance, we used to have students from Namibia. We used to have privately sponsored students from South Africa, from Lesotho, from Swaziland, from Zambia, from In fact, even in the graduating class of this year, we had some students from DRC. So if we broaden the scope and create capacity in the private sector, we should be able to draw students from distant places.
All right, let's talk a bit more broadly about what is now a popular catchphrase, which is the knowledge-based economy. What is your understanding of that phrase, and how is ABM positioning itself to be part of that?
Yes, a knowledge economy is around converting knowledge into economic returns, into money. For instance, it focuses more on creations, innovating around products, trading with what you know. We have just, in the recent past, established SIPA, where you register your IP, intellectual property, trademarks. Botswana has a capacity and prospects of using its intellectual capital to develop new products which can be tradable in the world. And therefore, being a knowledge economy refers to the use of this knowledge which can be generated through research, through innovative manufacturing or development of innovative products to reorient the economy. And therefore, tertiary institutions have to broadly look at those prospects, whether they are in science, technology, in agriculture. All of these areas provide opportunity for that. What ABM has done is they have refreshed the strategic plan, which has just been concluded recently, which is a 5-year strategic plan. And in that strategic plan, there is emphasis
in the interest
on
of full
research.
disclosure. I'm also a member of that exercise. For those who don't know, I happen to sit in the ABM board, but just so I make that clear. But just getting back to the knowledge-based economy and the role of ABM, are there specific courses or, if you like, modules that you offer in this connection that are specifically driving this idea?
We are at a point where we are developing new programs which will be more hands-on practical programs through which we would encourage our students to innovate, to produce, prototype. All of these things are part of the new ABM direction. One of the areas which we are looking at is agriculture. We have a piece of land in Francistown where we want to develop an elaborate research center on agricultural related fields. And of course, that would focus more on the areas around the Northeast, because our presence in Francistown should impact the immediate region, which is Francistown and the Northeast region.
Absolutely, yeah.
And therefore, we have to be conscious and alive to the fact that the community needs are impacted or addressed by the programs which will be delivered through ABM in Francistown. And of course, there's another smaller center which will be coming up in Lotakani East in Hangwaketse as part of the broader program offering.
The plan is to have those if you like, campuses offering what? Agricultural courses, in the sense of where students can actually practice the agriculture? Is that the thinking?
Yes, the intention is to provide facility and opportunity for full production. For instance, in Gaborone, out of the Block 6 campus, we developed a 4.5 million incubation youth entrepreneurship center in Rapatswa, in Mezimotab, where the facilities are open for students in ABM to do a range of innovations and products which they are interested in. So as an entrepreneurship center or an incubation center, we are providing this facility to our own students. At some point when we started, there were a chicken run shelters there. We had built in crawls for small stock.
Wow.
We had put in a concrete slab for those who want to do brick making. So, but that is left to the individual students. In that facility also, there is a shared office.
In other words, you provide the opportunity and the wherewithal, and it's up to the student to use their innovative wits, if you like, to take advantage.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things we have also provided a shared office space where there is a desk, free Wi-Fi, cabinets, lockable cabinets, so that if a young person is into entrepreneurship or business and they don't have an office, they can go and run their businesses from that facility.
Wow.
There is Wi-Fi.
I think you need to advertise that more. I don't think people know about that.
What? I don't
There's
think
Wi-Fi, there's what?
office space there is there.
Yeah. The only thing you don't offer is coffee, but I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
that can be arranged. Yes.
So those are the kind of innovations or capacities that we want to build in our youth. We last year, early this year, we ran a competition, which was done together with Yarona FM, where at every session, the award for the competition was to identify a student who would then be part of the 12 who would go through an entrepreneurship program for free at ABM cost, incubated at Haphazard.
That's wonderful.
So we should be
talk more about
starting
that, yes,
very soon.
and I'm sure the young entrepreneurs, I'm encouraging them to go to ABM to find out how they can take advantage of these opportunities. Now, I want us to talk about ABM, the
Yeah.
letters. What does the A mean, the B and the M? And what is that, how does that translate to your role? I've always believed that these names have special significance, but here's my opportunity to really get it out of you.
ABM in its original form, it was Academy of Business Management. But people then became accustomed to the abbreviation ABM. And ultimately it became a name,
It's a
ABM
brand.
University College. So that is what has become the operating or the trading name for Academy of Business Management. But the original registered name was Academy of Business Management. But the abbreviation has since assumed the trading name level.
Would you say that now it has morphed into, if you like, an entrepreneurship hub or center? Isn't that what it is now?
It is getting there. It is getting there because we are now looking at opportunities for diversification, particularly when we consider self-reliance. Because we would want to run programs which will create sustainability. When I conferred with Remohai at some point about one of the organizations in which he is a board member, he was telling me of a university.
Our former president.
Yes, former President Remohai. He was telling me of a university in Peru, which is in full production. They produce agricultural products, they package, sell to the market, and that is how they are able to offer scholarships to students out of their own business as a university. They do all the range of dairy products, whether it is milk, fresh milk, yogurt, cheese, you name it.
Well, that takes us to next point, which is about future prospects in terms of future expansion. Looking at your vision, looking at how you project into the future, given that example from Peru, for instance, is it something that you're working on, and can you paint the picture for us in terms of future prospects?
Yes. Future prospects are more inclined, as part of education offering, to identifying a niche a range of niches within the agricultural subsector. We've just recruited a research officer who's going to coordinate activities around research, so that as we explore prospects and possibilities, we are more anchored on giving our entrepreneurs opportunities, research opportunities, where they can identify that which they can do. And also in a larger economy, where we can identify opportunities to be pursued. We will be extending and broadening our collaboration partnerships. There are people who are already interested to partner with us in some of these fields, areas of research, in technology, in agriculture, in business. So that is the direction that we currently are working on.
Okay. I want us to talk about the broader and the bigger vision for the subcontinent, but perhaps before I talk about that, we should talk a little bit about COVID. How has it impacted you, and what strategies are you putting in place to not only survive but to thrive through this COVID period?
Yes, the biggest challenge initially was to adapt. We were not traditionally an online teaching service provider. Now, the advent of COVID necessitated an adjustment in the delivery of teaching or learning. So we therefore had to acclimatize our teaching staff with methods that are more related to online education delivery. Secondly,
talking
then
about Zoom and so on.
Even having to teachers to produce materials which could be provided to students online, other than having to be a Zoom meeting, for instance. Pre-recorded lessons that can be broadcast or sent to students on a scheduled arrangement. Then the second aspect related to the capacity. It therefore means that teachers have to work extended hours because of the social distancing requirement. You therefore, a classroom that had the capacity to hold 50, you then have to reduce it to about 25. And therefore, teachers have to work extended hours. That would mean also getting additional staff, because then ultimately
not cutting down on staff?
Cutting down on staff would overwork the available ones, because then instead of having one lesson or this particular lesson you are not going to have two, the same.
So I would imagine even the bottom line was impacted.
Yes. Then of course the financial implications became significant. The financial implications became
Let's go to the vision thing, the bigger vision in terms of for ABM. Can you project 5-10 years down the line?
The bigger vision for ABM is captured in the new strategy. The new strategy is to wean ourselves from government-supported dependence. We now have to come up with creative ways of finding students other than those sent by government. And that is a lot of work. Not only are we looking at marketing locally, but we have to cross the borders to see what opportunities exist in neighboring countries. Therefore, we are looking at having to be thorough and provide quality, and also deliberately design programs which are responsive to today's Botswana and which are responsive to future work. Because we cannot train only for today. We have to be anticipatory. There was a study that was done by ILO, International Labour Organization, the report is called The Future of Work. Because as technology advances and continues to change, certain jobs are rendered redundant. And as jobs become redundant, how do you take those who have been rendered redundant into either continuous employment. How do you retool them? And therefore, what are the future jobs themselves? What do they require? Robotics? How do you then provide your students today for robotics coming 5 years down the line? So that is where ABM is looking at the importance and the need to be adaptive so that we are able to be relevant in the next 10, 15, 20 years.
And this is documented. If people are interested,
Yes.
they can get in touch with you.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about politics, where you've spent a lot of time in your life. What would you say is the role of politics in education, and what has been your experience in that regard?
Yes. I think the role of politics is about policy design. Therefore, politics should be able to drive the policy development that is responsive not just to Botswana of today, but to future prospects for a country. And therefore, you need to develop your human resource such that they are adaptive. And that is what we need to do. Look at our institutions, for instance, Botswana Qualifications Authority. Do they have the capacity to audit and evaluate programs?
What is your verdict? Do they?
They have been struggling.
Mm.
Botswana Qualifications Authority has been struggling with in the area of capacity, because I know that a number of institutions have had programs submitted to them which have taken a long time to get approved. And of course, the ABM also suffered the same.
How do you think then we can reposition our politics to be a bit more forward-looking? I mean, do you foresee us going the route of the Dubais of this world, the Singapores of this world, even the Rwandas of this world, and to some extent Tanzania? I mean, there are a lot of countries that we see who are in a similar position as us 20 years ago, but have come a long way because of the robustness of the political leadership.
Yes. What I think what is important for me is the turnaround time in decision making, because that is all what makes the difference. If it takes 3 years, 4 years, 5 years for a decision to be made, the world is not waiting for us. So we need to have an empowered public service who are not timid about taking decisions. If they take a decision and it is wrong, forgive them, move on.
But they
Give
can't
them correction
they
action.
can't even take meetings, let alone decisions. I find that the senior public service in Botswana, they just don't take meetings. They're not accessible.
Yes, I think that is one of the weaknesses of the system. My view is liberate the public service, liberate the bureaucrats at permanent secretary level, at deputy permanent secretary level, at director level. People shouldn't be afraid of making mistakes. The reason why the public service is holding back everyone is because of fear of making a mistake. And if I make a mistake, how would my supervisor look at me? Would I be punished, or would I be counseled and assisted to do better? For me,
So how
the
do we,
turnaround
Mr.
time.
Minister, I won't let you off that
Yeah.
that easily. How do we emancipate them? How do we liberate them from that bureaucratic thinking? Because from what I understand, it's ingrained. It's even sort of, yeah.
Yes, it's ingrained. One of the things that has to happen is, as you liberate them, make sure that they are accountable. Make sure they are accountable. If they are not accountable, then you then have a mediocre service and leadership. But of course, there are currently, some of them are taking advantage of the fluid accountability that is expected of them, not to do anything. We must push them, but they must also understand that if I make a mistake, if I take this decision in good faith, yes, I'll be forgiven and counseled and guided. But again, we have to also
Because
The-
speaking as an entrepreneur, making mistakes is part of entrepreneurship.
Exactly.
In fact, we encourage it.
Absolutely.
The civil service is petrified of making any
Yes.
sort of mistakes.
That is our biggest mistake. That is our biggest problem. Fear of authority. I'll make a mistake, I'll be punished harshly. We must assist the bureaucrats to own decisions, to take personal responsibility. That is one of the things that Even when you look at our financing, how we use money, Ministry of Finance will give you a tranche. Your ministry is given a budget of 10 million, but you'll only be given 2. Another 2 will come in 3 months' time. Let them take responsibility. If the permanent secretary fails to account for the money, then the buck stops with him. He will
because
explain.
he's a finance officer or he's an accounting officer.
He's an accounting officer. So we need to change the attitude of the public service by removing the fear factor in them, so that they take responsibility and take responsibility together with accountability.
Okay, a young entrepreneur might be watching this thinking of the profit angle, asking themselves, is there any money to be made in education? Thinking of the profit motive, is this really profitable? Is the education business a profitable business? What would be your answer?
My answer is education entrepreneurship is not 100% profitable, because you look at the costs, your input cost, your output. The fees that you charge are the fees that we used to pay for your infrastructure, the lecturers, and everything else. So
overheads,
Yep. At the end of the day, the margins are very small. Whereas with the public institutions, they are given a subvention by government. And they also charge, on top of the subvention, they also charge government a fee for every student who is sent to them. So you may call it double dipping. But
is it double dipping? You don't want to answer that one. I won't insist on an answer.
They should be given some subvention, but the bulk of the money should come from the school fees. And part of the money, in my view, university, public institutions should be given money for research. But then the school fees should then meet the other costs. But research at University of Botswana, at BUST, at Buan, should be such that we no longer do research for the sake of academic proficiencies, but research that will yield beneficial results, where you can say, no, we have produced musi as an animal, Botswana. Then from musi, where else do we move to? What are the other adaptive animals that we can produce out of musi? Someone was asking me recently about the gene pool of our wildlife. Do we have a bank here where we have all the genes of the pohu, the kukama, all of these things? All of those.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we don't.
We don't. We don't. We haven't even.
It's an opportunity.
It is an opportunity. It is an opportunity.
Okay. All right. Setswana says morotoa esigaele, and in this connection, I'm just wondering, as educational institutions, do you ever group together? Do you ever form not even a consortium, but organizations where you can lobby government and get things done as a group?
Yes, there is a subsector within Business Botswana that focuses on education, both primary and tertiary. So that is the platform that for most of the time it is used to bring matters to government and create a platform to engage government on education matters.
And how effective is it?
I'm not too sure of its effectiveness. I've not attended any of their meetings, but I'm aware that there is always a season for them to meet towards through the sub HLCC high subcommittee of the higher level consultative meeting, and therefore they also have their own little sub HLCC through which they would confer with the ministry on the various subject matters.
So they probably need to be revamped.
No, they need to be revamped and become aggressive and
all right.
visible.
Now, at this point in our conversation, you get a chance to ask me a question. Any question that you may be interested in me answering. Go ahead, Mr. Minister.
What has been the staying power of the Mogobe attorneys? I've known you years ago when you started.
Okay.
But
All right.
you remained in the law practice and ultimately diversified. What has been your staying power at both the law firm and the diverse?
It's a powerful question. Let me see if I can answer it this way. When we started Lerumo Mogobe Legal Practitioners in 1991, I always recognized way back then that if I'm alone, just like I've said in Setswana, I can't get very far.
No.
So we've always been insistent on having partnerships. I mean, from day one I had a partner, to this day I have a partner, so that I'm able to offload and to grow. I normally say to young practitioners coming out of UB that if you want to be a sole practitioner, know that you won't get very far. That is a certainty.
True.
So because I've always partnered with others, although in some instances I had control and I had ultimate authority, but I've always allowed others to be able to practice. For instance, I deliberately did not become a conveyancer for fear that I may want to do everything myself. So but now I always have another partner who has a conveyancing certificate. I'll have other people with other capacities and abilities to do the work even in my absence. So when I physically removed myself from the firm in 2013, it wasn't very difficult for the remaining partners to then carry on with it. Even now, we are continually growing. We now have 5 attorneys, including myself, and the idea is to have even up to 7 attorneys, and we're in the process of moving into the CBD. So as long as we recognize that there's no such thing as a one-man success story. You only succeed with others and with inputs from others. I think for me that is the key thing, apart from my religious faith. My religious faith has also played a role as a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, where I put everything to God and I'm continually seeking the wisdom from up above. I do not know if I've answered your question.
No.
Okay.
True.
All right.
I've been answered.
All right.
I've been answered.
Mr. Minister, you have to look at that camera and say a few words as we conclude. Words of encouragement. No, that one. Words of encouragement, words of support, words of wisdom that you can leave the viewers with.
I think for me, what is important is we shouldn't give up on this country. Every citizen matters. It is important that we apply ourselves to whatever task is at hand, whether it is at an individual level, it is at a corporate level. As Mogobe has said, together we can succeed. What is important is for us to be each other's keeper, pulling ourselves by the bootstrap and standing tall because we are on the shoulders of giants. And we are all, as citizens of this country, giants. And if we allow our brothers, our sisters to stand on our shoulders, indeed, we too will be the giants they are. Thank you very much.
Mr. Minister, as we conclude, some of the viewers may want to get in touch with ABM, perhaps with yourself, to maybe carry on with this conversation or to even take advantage of your facilities, some of which relating to entrepreneurship are very fascinating. So can you give us your contact details and addresses?
Yes. ABM is located at plot 38796. 38796 Lepala Road in Block 6. Telephone number, the landline 3956887. Then, of course, my telephone number is 72527722.
Okay, thank you. Can you give them one reason why they should watch Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom?
Because the reason why you should watch Mogobe Nuggets
And subscribe also.
and subscribe is because it helps your growth at a personal level. It informs, it educates, it enriches. And therefore, it is important that we subscribe or you subscribe for continuous growth and development.
It remains for me, Mr. Minister, we've known each other for 3 or 4 decades now, to honor you and to thank you and to say that, look, we appreciate you honoring this invitation and we'll continue to work together through ABM and other platforms. Thank you very much for coming.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.